All right, I guess we'll get underway. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome again to On the Issues. This, as many of you know, is our continuing series of conversation with news and policymakers, people who are doing interesting things in our world. And today we're very lucky to have with us a Marquette University Law School alum and the former president and chairman of the Milwaukee Brewers, Wendy Selig-Prieb. Please give her a warm welcome back to Marquette Law School. It's good to have you back here. I have to ask you, what did you learn in this place that served you well in the world of professional baseball and the world after professional baseball?
Well, I probably have some professors here that I surprised over the last 20-plus years, but I did learn a lot, and I have really, really fond memories of the law school. You know, some people sort of get through law school, and it's a means to an end, and some people really love law school. And I am definitely in that former category. I loved my 3 years here and had lots of good experiences. And I was telling Mike that a few days ago I was running in Arizona, where it's a little bit warmer than it is here. And I was thinking about, you know, kind of in my own mind, reminiscing with some of my experiences. And I had lots of good ones, some funny, some not quite as funny, but ones that really held me in good stead. And a couple things that I think of and that I say in particular to the students here, take advantage of all the opportunities. Because, for example, I did a moot court competition. And I was not interested in being a litigator, but I thought it would be a really good experience to compete and see how it went. And I ended up really enjoying it. And my partner and I made it to the national competition for the labor team. And Professor Hammer, who I know is still here, was our coach. And for those of you who have had Professor Hammer, you know he's a fabulous teacher, but he can be a bit intimidating at times. And,
Professor Hammer?
Yeah,
really?
Stunning, I know. But he's probably mellowed out. At least 20 years ago, he could be. And at that time, and I was always very prepared. You know, in life, I don't like a lot of surprises, so I'm always prepared. And so as we got ready for the national competition, he said, you know, you do a great job. But he said, why do you have all these notes in front of you? And I said, well, because I need them. You know, there's a lot of stuff, and I want to make sure I don't miss anything. And he said, but, you know, you're so much better when you don't talk with notes. You start speaking with expression, you use your hands, you're much more compelling. So he said, at the national competition, you're not using your notes. I said, I can't do that. I've never done that. And he said, trust me, it will work out. And I was scared to death, but of course you can't say no to Professor Hammer. So I did it, and it worked out. We did okay. But it was a really good lesson for me, because even though I wasn't interested in being a litigator, and I broke that news to him after the competition, you know, in life, you end up doing a lot of public speaking. And at that point, you know, as a college student, law student, really hadn't done much. And so I think it did a lot to not only help me and give me some exposure to public speaking, but also force me to do something that I didn't think I could do. And this is the time. Part
of the growing experience. You knew you didn't want to be a litigator. I think you knew from a fairly early age that baseball was something you did want to do. How young were you when you knew that you wanted to have a career in baseball?
Well, you know, I was really lucky because, of course, my family was involved in baseball. And so a lot of people talk about their first time they went to a major league ball game and what it was like. In my case, I can't remember the first time because I was probably very young. But what I do remember is I always loved the game. And I was lucky because with my father in the business, I learned not only about the game, but I did learn about the business. And my parents brought us up to believe that if we worked hard and we had a good education, we could do anything. So it never occurred to me that because I was a woman, that there might be opportunities, whether they be in baseball or otherwise, that wouldn't be available to me, because my parents had always told me, all you got to do is work hard and get a good education, and you know, you can do whatever you set your mind to. And so I always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to be involved in baseball. I didn't have sort of a master plan. I didn't know how it would all come about, but I knew it was something that at some point I would do. And in undergrad, I was a political science major. And I decided, I think around my junior year, that I wanted to go to law school. And interestingly, no one in my family had ever been a lawyer. So it's a natural evolution from political science. A lot of my friends were starting to talk about it. I said, oh, yeah, law school, that would be interesting. And so as I started to think about it, ironically, after college, I went and I worked in the commissioner's office in New York, and I spent most of my time in what was then the Player Relations Committee, which handles labor relations for baseball's management. And I loved it. I was only supposed to be there a year, and one of the women ended up going on a maternity leave, so I got to stay for 2 years and got to do some things I probably wouldn't have otherwise gotten to do. And so after the second year, I knew I'd gotten about as far as I could without a law degree. And so when I started law school, I fully intended to be a labor lawyer. It's all I knew. Having no other exposure to any other fields within the legal community, it just seemed like a natural. And then as I got into law school and got exposed to other things, I ultimately ended up going into corporate law.
You worked for a couple of years for Foley and Lardner, and then went to work for the Brewers, general counsel. And then in 1992, I think it was, your father became the acting commissioner in baseball, and you really started to take on the day-to-day operations of a Major League Baseball team. You were a rarity in those days. Women, let's face it, we're not doing that in the world of professional sports, certainly not in the world of professional baseball at that time. So I have to ask you the question, what was it like being the woman in charge in such a male-dominated sport?
And, you know, if you think about it, at that time, I really had 3 strikes, if you will. In some people's eyes, I was a woman, and I was young.
How old? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, I don't mind. I just turned 50. So if I'm willing to say that I'm 50 now, I'm willing to share with you. I was 32, I guess, at the time. And you know, relatively inexperienced compared to people who'd been doing this all their lives. But I actually think all 3 things, in many ways, worked for me. And they did in that I had been involved in lots of areas where there aren't a lot of women. And for the women who are sitting in here, it certainly is better today in most fields, but there's still lots of them. I mean, I was in the corporate transactions area at Foley, and at that point, there were no female partners in that area, and there was 1 other female associate. So it was hardly the first time that I had been the only woman or in a different position. The difference is when you're in sports, everybody's looking at you. All of a sudden, nobody cares when you're a corporate attorney in a big firm. You know, it's nice and it's interesting, but you don't have media and the general public focused on you in the way that you do when you're involved in sports. And so what I always say is, you know, you can look at baseball today, and it's true for the other sports as well. And one of the things that we are all very fortunate about is that sports has become a much more sophisticated business than it was. So it used to sort of be, well, if you hadn't played, it wasn't even such a gender issue, but if you hadn't played, how could you know how to scout a player? How could you know how to market a team? Well, today, the skills that you need, whether it's on the baseball side or the business side, are not the same skills that you need to play the game. And so as the business has become more sophisticated, as the dollars have gotten bigger, the levels of expertise that are needed within the industry are very different than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. And the good news is it's opened up opportunities for women, for people who didn't play the game, for people that come with different backgrounds, but come with the technical experience and expertise that's needed.